Hello and welcome back to my slightly belated review of Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes. Yes, hello, welcome back. My name is Paul Mount. This is my world of stuff. Yes, it's my a slightly belated review of Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes. It's now Friday afternoon. I went to see it Thursday morning. My plan was to review it in the afternoon, but to be honest, when I got back, it's actually quite a nice sunny day, and I thought, I'm going to sit outside and have a read and relax for a bit. The review can wait. And judging by the numbers of people who've been looking at my last few videos, I don't think that many people are hanging on my every word to find out what I think of the film. But I'm going to do it now anyway. Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes is directed by Wes Ball. He's probably best known for directing the Maze Runner films, the young adventure science fiction series of films a few years back. And it's written by Josh Friedman. The film is the latest in the reboot of the classic Planet of the Apes franchise, a franchise which was very dear to me in the 60s and 70s. I love the original Apes films for all their faults, and I was worried when they rebooted the series again in about 2011 with Rise of the Planet of the Apes, particularly after the frankly dreadful Tim Burton version from a few years back, which really, although it wasn't a massive flop, I think creatively it sort of sent the series into directions that it wasn't particularly comfortable in. However, the trilogy that we've had, Rise, Dawn and War for the Planet of the Apes, are fantastic films. And because of that, because of the fact that those films are so good, Planet of the Apes is a franchise that I really cherish. Not just because of my childhood connections with it, but the fact that I think that the resurrected version, the new story, has been so good. It's a series that is told with intelligence, and it's obvious every film has had a lot of care and dedication lavished upon it, because it's not just thrown together. These aren't just films that are flung out to make a quick buck at the box office, naming no other franchises. This is a series of films that is very measured and very considered. People who make them care about the stories they're telling, care about the world they're creating, care about the characters that they're populating their stories with. And I think that the trilogy that we've had has been pretty much perfect. I've sort of seen some of them recently again. The films you can endlessly rewatch, and they are just so good, so immaculate. And I'm not speaking through the rose-tinted lenses of a blinkered fan who can see no wrong. I just think that they're really good films because they're intelligent and they've got something to say and they're full of great action. And it is a hard balancing act for a film to tick all those boxes, but I think those films have done it. When War brought the story of Caesar and his rise to dominion, apes rebelling against their ill treatment by humans, the virus that spreads across the world that wipes out humanity, that story was told. We know what happened at the end of War. I won't spoil it in case you haven't seen it, but that was the end of a story. It was a book closing. And I was intrigued to hear stories over the next couple of years that more stories were planned. And it's been a few years now since the last film, and I'm pleased about that. I'm pleased they've taken their time and not just rushed out another film. They've sat back and thought, right, what story is there to be told? Because I'm not entirely sure, even now, if these films really fit into the chronology of the original films or whether they're a retelling of the original Planet of the Apes story, because there are links to the films. And in fact, there's links to the first film in this new film. So I think they've taken their time to find a place in the chronology that they could tell a new story, and a new story worth telling. And hopefully, and it appears, a new story worth telling in a new trilogy, of which this is the first. It's interesting. I've seen some of the reviews and I've read some of the criticism of this, from the commentary of this film, which has generally gone down very well. People seem to agree that this is a great film. It's really well done, spectacular, intelligent, thought-provoking. But there are one or two people who are, and I understand it, making comparisons with the last three films. I'm not going to do that. I understand why people do it, and I don't blame them for doing it. I have no real criticism of that. But for me, that's a story. That was a story in 3 parts that was told, and that's now finished. This is a new story. This is a new book opening, and I'm not really going to compare it with the past 3 films because I think it's unfair to them, it's unfair to this. This is a whole new story, a whole new world, telling a story in a different way. Having said that, however, I don't think this disgraces those first 3 films in any way. The story, as you will know from various other commentary, no doubt, it's set generations in the future after the passing of Caesar in the last film. Oops, spoiled it after all. Apes are now the dominant species. Humanity is, what's left of humanity is mute and scavenging and a bit of a nuisance to ape kind. Our lead character in this new film is Noah, played by Owen Teague. He is a descendant of Caesar, and he carries Caesar's message about him. He is part of what's called an eagle clan, and they train eagles, and they're very much based on that sort of element of nature, as it were. But as is usual in these things, these stories, things don't necessarily run along smoothly. He's just trying to keep his ape kind together in their little city. But unfortunately, they draw the attention of various other ape factions who aren't quite as pacifistic. Along the way, they meet up with a character called May, played by Freya Allen, who apparently appeared in The Witcher on TV. She is a mute girl who, I think from the off, she's not quite, you sort of sense there's something slightly different about her, particularly when we discover quite quickly that she can talk. And when we discover that she's a bit brighter and a bit more intelligent and a bit more sense of purpose than the rest of the humans. We also have the bonobo, Proximus Caesar. He takes the name of the original Caesar in vain. He has devalued the teachings of the original Caesar because he now wants the apes to be dominant completely over humankind. There's sort of a peace between the two species now, but he wants to be able to dominate the planet of the apes. And to do this, he wants to access a massive sealed vault on the coast somewhere in America, wherein he believes there are secrets that will enable him to take over. And to do this, he has enlisted a tribe of apes, and they're constantly trying to get into this vault, trying to explode the doors and pull the doors open, but it constantly resists their efforts. The Eagle clan are eventually subjugated, taken back in chains to the sea fortress that Proximus Caesar has set up there in the wrecked hull of an old ship. And this is where May comes into her own, because it transpires that she's not quite what she appears to be. I'll say no more at the moment. I think I've probably said too much as it is. Well, this is a great film. This is a really good film. So immersive and so captivating in terms of bringing you into this world that's brought to the screen. Visual effects, I mean, the apes have never looked better than this. If I'm going to make a comparison with the last 3 films, I will say that the motion capture that brings the apes to the screen has moved on in leaps and bounds. A bit like a gorilla or an ape leaping through the trees. Whereas before they looked fantastic, but now they've been able to do something to make the apes look even more expressive. Little twitches, the shape of the face moves more than it did before. It's astonishing performances, and you do, as you've always done in these films, you forget you're watching motion capture. The characters are so well delineated and so well performed, and the script services them so well, you don't think that these are motion capture. They are real apes. And there are certain scenes that are stunningly done. There's scenes involving rushing water, with apes in rushing water, and the matted fur, and it's just so realistic, so hyper-realistic. It really is extraordinary. It's a great story, which is setting up 2 more films. I mean, some of the criticism I've seen from quite senior critics is that it feels very bitty. It just feels like it's the first part of a story. It's because it is. It's a story in itself. It has a beginning, it has a middle, it has an end, but there are very clear pointers to where this is going, and if you've seen the film, you'll know what I mean. So to criticise it for feeling like part of a story is pretty stupid criticism, because that's exactly what it is. But as with all of these 3 films, you don't necessarily have to see them all. You can watch one. It's clear that this is going ahead somewhere else, somewhere interesting. But this is a story in and of itself, and it satisfies in and of itself. If I've one criticism, and it's a very small criticism, I think, is that the first half an hour to 40 minutes seems a little sluggish, bearing in mind that you are getting used to new characters as well. And I think the film takes perhaps a bit too much time introducing us to Noah and his clan and his family's various relationships and so on. Bearing in mind we're looking at neo-identical apes, but there are ways of distinguishing them and so on. But I think the first 40 minutes, possibly because we haven't had an apes film for so long, took a little bit longer than it might have done to get back into the world. But once I was in it, once the story really kicked in, I was there, I was in, and I was just as gripped as I've ever been by a Planet of the Apes film. So there's so much to enjoy in this film. It's a great script. It's an intelligent script. It says a lot about the way we treat each other, the way we should learn from animals. We can learn from animals. It says so much about so many things. And visually, it is astonishing. It's a mid-budget film. I think it cost about $120, $130 million off the top of my head. But the visual effects are fantastic. And you do, for those of you who like those post-apocalyptic things that I do, there's some really nice shots of shattered cities in the distance and rotting hulks of ships. That's a particularly haunting image that resonates throughout the last half of the film. These ships that are just hulks of rusty metal in the sea. And there's a couple of scenes that take place in what's a deserted sort of baseball stadium. It's completely overgrown. The shadow of humanity looms large over this film, should we say. And there are some nice callbacks to the original Planet of the Apes. There's a couple of camera angles, particularly where characters are on horseback along by the sea, which will evoke memories of the first film. And one very nice subtle callback to the first film, which I don't know how many people will pick up on it, but it involves a doll. So there we are. That's my sort of review of Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes. I thoroughly enjoyed it. As I said, I'm not going to make those comparisons with the previous films, other than to say it does not let them down in any way and stands strongly side by side with them as the first part of a new story. I love these films, and I'm very excited, especially having seen this, and once you've seen it, you'll know the ending of it. How it moves forward from this, I think, is going to be fascinating and exciting. I think the stakes are going to get higher, and I think we're in for a good time over these next two films. Obviously, it depends on how well this film does. I think it's expected to do well, so I think we can expect the new one in 2 or 3 years' time. And please let me hang around long enough to see it. Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, hugely recommended by me. I'm going to give it a big fat 9 out of 10. 9 out of 10. Just go and see it, for God's sake. You'd be bananas not to. Right, thank you for watching. I'll see you soon. Please like and subscribe. Stick around, leave a comment down below. Tell me what you thought of this film, if you've seen it, if you're planning to see it. If you're not planning to see it, why not? What's wrong with you? I'll see you soon. Until I do, keep taking the stuff.